So, you're taking higher English, and your chosen topic, well, there's not that you can choose, that's for advanced higher English, which everyone's going to be taking next year, I'm sure. But chances are, in your class, you'll be doing The Great Gatsby, or maybe you'll be doing some bullshit like The Kite Runner, or like Frankenstein. No, I think you do that in S1 actually. If you are one of the million students who are going to be taking The Great Gatsby, I am the person you are going to need in order to pass your exams. The date is... what does my laptop say? The 4th of May. My exam is on the 11th, and I thought, what way to not only scratch the itch I have to make a YouTube video and also revise at the same time is make a video on how you can also pass higher English, which I'm going to. I'm going to pass higher English. I will. The GCSEs do it, but I don't care what GCSEs. This is about higher English. I don't know if it'll work in other things, but I think I have a pretty good chance of getting a good stab at an A in higher. I might get a B, but I mean, higher English, a B is pretty satisfactory for a lot of people, so I will find I'm just a tryhard. What are my credentials for telling you how to pass higher English, seeing as I'm obviously very English? Maybe that's promising to you. I know, though, however, I think a lot of Scottish students find it better to listen to a Scottish accent, but unfortunately I can't do that, so I will have to be speaking in my English accent for this video. But hey, I am a predicted A student, so maybe that matters to you. I mean, you know, on the exam day, who knows what happens, but this video is about The Great Gatsby and how to write a critical essay on it that will really just, like, it will get your English teacher going, or whoever's grading it. I mean, this isn't for exam crunchers, although, you know, it is for me. Okay, there are 4 types of critical essays that will come up in a question to you in your exam paper. That's theme, character, key point or turning point, and setting. Those are the 4 main ones. And there's also symbolism, which in my prelim, formal assessment, I don't know quite what they're called in all schools, but you know, in your prelim, because you know the 3 topics, but the exam papers aren't going to be that straightforward with you. Obviously in Nat 5, you had, you know, you had really, really basic questions. You might not have realised it at the time. In Nat 5, you might have thought, oh, there's so many different questions, I can't handle it. But they are very easy, as you can probably find now, compared to higher English questions, as they will literally just talk about a theme you find interesting, talk about a character you find interesting. There's hardly any more specific details than that. And in higher English, there are some ones that are just like, why would you, this has to do with nothing. Sometimes they can be so specific. But the exam paper questions, they can be stressful. This is probably the most stressful part of your critical reading part, apart from the poetry, but we're not going to talk about the poetry. This is about critical essays. The questions will freak you out, inevitably. In my prelim, there were 2 that I should not have answered. See, that's the thing. I don't know about exams, obviously, because they're general. They're made by the SQA, or at least they are for now. It might change soon. But your teachers have made it, and listen, I'm not a teacher. I'm not a teacher. I am best friends with my English teacher, but I'm not a teacher. Give you questions, and one of them, depending on what you... usually there is one you should choose, you know. And that's not to say someone's doing that on purpose, but look at... Basically read the question. Look at the question. Because there's gonna be a few that are clearly the ones you can't write an essay about. Don't try and just, like, freestyle it. Don't freestyle it, that's not a good idea. You know, maybe you'll have to. I don't know. I hope I don't have to in my exam. But pick something that you know is close to what you're writing about. It'll be worded differently. It'll be, you know, they'll thesaurus it up. They'll put it in a different wording. But just look at it and try and dissect the fundamentals of what it is asking you. What is it asking you to talk about? Think about whatever you're studying. If you're watching this, it's going to be The Great Gatsby. Think about The Great Gatsby and think, can I talk about this? If it's a character question and you're good at writing character questions, alright, that seems like a good bet, right? But what is the character question asking you? Is it asking you, for example, I did this in my prelim, I fucked it up so bad. It was a character question, and that was what I was most confident in at the time, because I really like any of the other questions, and so I picked character, but the character question was something along the lines of, talk about a character who changes throughout the story. Now, I don't know if you've read The Great Gatsby, probably should have by this point, but that's not what The Great Gatsby... Jay Gatsby, the man, does not change. That's kind of the whole problem with him. That's his fatal flaw. Tried to write an essay about that. I didn't even finish, but that was just because I'm quite a slow writer. But yeah, that was not good. I got 10 out of 20. that says something, you know. I got 10 out of 20 in a question that was just not right. You just can't write a good essay about that for The Great Gatsby. I'm sure you could maybe do that. No, to be honest, I don't think you could write any of the characters in The Great Gatsby. That's what I mean, see. Sometimes it just doesn't work at all. And you have to be careful for that to make sure you're not really just like dragging something out that can't really be analysed. You have to make sure what you're doing is somehow relevant to your story, because that's going to be the easiest thing to write about. Obviously you can bullshit anything, but like just try and make it easy for yourself and don't go with something that looks easy at first but might not actually be. Character essays. Character essays for The Great Gatsby. Always write about Gatsby. Always write about Gatsby, unless obviously there's a question that talks about narration, but frankly I've avoided those all term. I don't want to write about narration because the chances are you're going to need to remember a quote about something that Nick has said. Fucking useless, man. He is not that important for higher English. In the actual novel, very interesting. If, you know, if I was doing this for fun, of course I would write an essay about Nick Carraway, but unfortunately that's just not really going to be very helpful in your higher English. And higher English is just like a manufactured procedure to get you to be logical and remember things well. So, I mean, it's really not that big of a deal. I was supposed to talk about characters, sorry, but I do recommend, really, because I don't know whether you looked at a marking scheme, but one of the things that will get you more points is a deep understanding of the text, you know, like poor, adequate, good, very good, great. I don't think they use the word great, but you know what I mean. It's like, and you do that. I was confused by that. I asked my English teachers, like, what does it mean, like a deep understanding of the text? Because, like, I've read the text a lot and I understand it, so how do I show that in my writing? And, again, I was supposed to be talking about character, whatever. You do that by writing a long analysis about a quote. Don't just write a few sentences, I write whole paragraphs. It's really quite bad. You can do that by referring to other quotes that also apply to the point you're making. So, for example, if I'm talking about the green light, don't we just fucking love talking about the green light? You mention the green light, you talk about its significance, how it's the Gatsby's, how it's Gatsby's personal personification of the American dream, that is Daisy. It shows that his dreams are unattainable and he yearns because his word choice is stretched. And I take that and it can, well, see, this is the thing, it can work great. It can be either turn into sort of 2 paragraphs, or it will just get you more recognition for bringing up this point by saying this metaphor is so effective and goes on throughout the text. You could say it's an extended metaphor, I think, I'm not sure. And, talk about the quote that's like, the colossal significance of that light had now vanished forever. It was once again now just a single light on a dock or something. His number of enchanted objects had diminished by 1. So you can not just talk about his stretch his arm out towards a single green light, because that's boring. Every marker is probably going to read that. You can take your point about the green light and show that you have basically read the book by referencing it later on. You haven't just memorised it in a chronological way. You can also take this point, and because obviously they're like green light beginning at the novel, green light basically the middle of the novel, and then it shows that's your understanding of the text, because basically understanding of the text is to show that you can point things out that have happened more than once in the book. Basically, don't take my word for this. I like doing that when it makes me feel smart. If it makes me feel smart, then maybe it will make you feel smart as well. Okay, character. Great Gatsby. Always write about Gatsby. Why? Because he's going to be the broadest thing for most questions. I'll put example questions up. These are the ones you can write for him, and basically so many others. Obviously they make up new ones every year, so I don't know what they're gonna be saying or doing. Gatsby is the catalyst of this novel. He is the big metal pole you stick up in the sky and hope lightning strikes. That's basic. Oh my, you know, that's a good metaphor. Character questions, most likely you are gonna get Gatsby. And if you know it's not gonna be about Gatsby, if, like, for example, if it's about a narrator, pick another question. If it's not about Gatsby, don't even bother, because I think it'll take a lot of your workload trying to remember all these different, you know, characters. You know, like Daisy's interesting to talk about, Nick's interesting to talk about. You can write essays about Myrtle, you can write essays about Tom, I guess, if you really want. Because he has so many things going on with him, obviously. He has his fatal flaw, he has his platonic conception, he has the green light. You can talk about a green light in just all of his essay. Usually, you know, most naturally it goes for themes about the American dream, but Gatsby, he also snatches that one up. It goes right up. And you can even, if you want, you can use symbolism of his setting. Oh, you know what, that's actually quite a good idea. Obviously, it depends what the specifics of the character question are. It might tie into their fate, you know, their suffering, their type of sometimes, you know, if you're lucky, it's just like a question of, do you find this character sympathetic? But I haven't gotten that one yet. I actually need to write one for that. Another thing you can analyse about Gatsby is the motif of time. In case you don't just want to shoehorn the whole, you can't be the past. Why, of course you can, old sport. His character is, I bring up the mantelpiece clock, the defunct mantelpiece on Nick's mantelpiece, I guess. Daisy and Gatsby reunite for the first time, and he's so nervous that for some reason he's leaning his head back on Nick's clock, and he catches it with trembling fingers. And he says sorry, and Nick's like, it's an old clock, it's fine, and he's like, oh, why did I say that? Which is funny. I like that of Nick. That's symbolic for his desire to cling on to the past with Daisy, and it's good because he's just revealed that, like, oh, it's gonna be 6 years in November or something like that, because, you know, and you can also talk about that. Listen, it's hard for me to know when to stop, because the fact that he says it's almost November, or whenever he says it is, he says it's almost is, and that shows how much he's been keeping track of this. That shows how, like, how set he is on Daisy. Like, he's obsessed with it. He's literally counting the days, the weeks, the months. I haven't written about that. That's maybe a bit excessive, but I mean, it's in-depth analysis, I should think. You can say, oh, can't be the past? Why, of course you can, obviously, because that just, and that's, again, that's the in-depth analysis thing. You're saying, I've proved this happens at this point in the book. Here is where this happens again later on in the book. That's what I like talking about is his platonic conception, which, if you don't know the definition of, platonic means like the ideal version of something. I talk about this because I think it perfectly symbolises like how he is tied to the American dream. And when you're talking about the American dream in an essay, never just talk about it. Always talk about, obviously, how the American dream sucks. It doesn't work. It's not the impossibility of the American dream. It's unattainable. And I think it symbolises this so well. I hate the way I talk. Because it's James Gatz that has this platonic conception of himself. Jay Gatsby is not him. It's who we're sort of seeing because it's a persona he puts on. But Jay Gatsby is sort of James Gatz's own personal American dream. Like Daisy is, he has his own personal inhibitions about what the American dream is to him, because obviously people have different expectations of like success in life. It's not just maybe owning a good business, maybe it's just having enormous amounts of wealth and being this perfect person, because Jay Gatsby is supposed to be the perfect person, or it's how James Gatz is trying to do it. But see, the thing is, this shows how the American dream is unattainable for James Gatz, because he has deluded himself into believing that Jay Gatsby is perfect. But Jay Gatsby is supposed to be perfect, and yet, as we can see through the novel, he has all these flaws. He literally has a fatal flaw that literally kills him. He's egotistical, he's selfish. Look at the way he treats Daisy in the turning point of the novel, where he speaks for her. And once he realises that he's been rejected by her, she just turns into a voice in the background that begged to go. Jesus Christ, sorry. All he cares about is Daisy's money. Because her voice is full of money, the voice begged to go again. It shows that he's reducing her down to an object, a trophy wife. And that's a big fucking flaw in my opinion. Jeremy Gatsby, that's his real name. These flaws, well, it's Jay Gatsby, it's a platonic conception. He's not supposed to have any flaws. But James Gatz, that's the flaws we're seeing. He is the man with the flaws, because theoretically, the concept of Jay Gatsby is supposed to be perfect, but he's not perfect. Why? Because the American dream is unattainable. James Gatz has deluded himself into believing that he has become Jay Gatsby. And that's why he does all this stuff, obviously, because, like, okay, I have the money, I have the name, I'm about to get the girl, I am Jay Gatsby. But that's why he'll never achieve the dream, because he thinks he kind of already has, or he's just about to, when in fact he's just sort of lying to himself. And that's what the American dream is, it's lying to yourself, because it's impossible to achieve it, even though Jay Gatsby thinks he will. Have you got that? Talk about the platonic conception. It's quite good. Right, okay. Theme. Theme's always fun. I think theme can be considered quite an easy one. So there are two types of theme essays, really, that I have considered. Obviously there are loads of theme essays, because there are loads of themes in The Great Gatsby, but specifically I'm going to talk about the themes of the American dream and human values. You will have seen the question that's like, talk about an important human value that is explored in the text. Those ones I feel pretty like confident in. I'll have to like look and see if there are any, because you know there are loads. It's about like they talk about theme of love and loss and redemption. And once again, obviously, in either essay you can talk about the green light. But for the American Dream, obviously you talk about the green light for reasons you already know. It establishes that Gatsby is a dreamer. You can talk about the setting of New York. Once we've slid over this bridge, anything could happen, even Gatsby could happen without any particular wonder. That is a sort of ironic twist, I feel. Listen, I don't know anything, literally. Because it talks about how New York, and you know, this is true, New York was viewed as a city of opportunity and basically where everyone would come to try and be successful. Oh, it's my brother texting me. Oh, fuck off, mate. Don't even care about him. Thought it was important. Oh yeah, New York, place where all the new money millionaires are. And so Nick, as you remember, on the car ride, he's going to New York with Gatsby. And Gatsby has just almost convinced Nick that his story is true, that his story that he, you know, inherited all his money and he was in the war. Well, he was in the war, but you know what I mean. All of Gatsby's weird lies. Even Gatsby could happen without any particular wonder. That is Nick becoming open to the realization, oh, maybe this guy isn't as sinister as he seems. And that's kind of ironic in terms of the American Dream, because turning point happens in New York. He gets rejected by Daisy, and then on the way back in the Valley of the Ashes, that's why he dies. Because Daisy hit Myrtle, Gatsby dies, because George Wilson thinks he did it, thinks he's the one his wife's been having an affair with, and shoots him in the head. As you know, that's one bit you remember from the novel. It's quite important. And so the city of New York, that's supposed to be full of opportunity, it's where the American Dream is kind of sort of based in this novel. This is where it all happens. This is the big shining lights. But you can see from the way Fitzgerald has used this setting to, you know, shift the story. It's where the key turning point happens, and that key turning point is crucial to Gatsby's fate. And Gatsby sort of represents the American Dream. Gatsby dies, the American Dream is dead. Isn't that so nice and convenient? Because Fitzgerald uses it in this way, we can see that this is a negative telling of the American Dream. It's impossible, it's unattainable, it's bad, it causes suffering, and we can all see this through his setting. Speaking of setting that shows the American Dream is impossible, the Valley of the Ashes. A fantastic farm where ashes grow like wheat into ridges and hills and grotesque gardens, where ash grey men they are already crumbling into the air because they're made of dust. The Valley of the Ashes is really easy to talk about, and I do recommend slipping that in wherever you can, because I mean, just add more paragraphs the better, if it applies to the theme, obviously. The Valley of the Ashes. I think I'll be going on forever if I talk about every, you know, nuance of that. Obviously with the labourers and stuff like that, this is already just like, as you can see, the American Dream is dead. Because these are the most hard-working people in the story. They don't even get, like, nobody talks to any of these workers who are obviously stuck in poverty living in the Valley of the Ashes, which is basically just the dumping ground of over-consumerism. All the rich people buy all this stuff they don't need, and it's either made or just comes to this place, you know. We can see that because poverty exists and because all these people are so hardworking, the American Dream has already failed, because why are these people here? Why aren't they being successful? They're working hard enough? That's weird. Why aren't they rich and successful? Because the American Dream has failed. But and of course the comparison to agriculture and the imagery shows just how desolate this place is, because the Valley of the Ashes symbolises moral decay in American society because of all the, you know, the poor people and Myrtle's infidelity and Tom's infidelity and how Myrtle dies there. T.J. Eckelberg is by far the easiest piece of symbolism to talk about because it's pretty straightforward. I mean, he's in the Valley of the Ashes, he's looking over everyone, he represents the eyes of God, as said by George Wilson. He points it out to us. So that's the theme. Consequently, leading on to symbolism. Symbolism is great because so far, symbolism just keeps cropping up all over the place. You've got the motif of time, which is also symbolism. The clock is symbolic. The green light, big fucking massive one. T.J. Eckelberg, good one. Owl eyes, a simple one to talk about, but it is good because he ties into a lot to Gatsby and themes like that. So you can talk about how he basically sees through everything. Whatever theme you're talking about, whatever part of the symbolism you're discussing, owl eyes, you can say that we can see that this theme is relevant because owl eyes kind of like sees through. Illusions versus reality, he's a big one for that. Symbolism, you can talk about anything. You can talk about symbolism of characters' names. You can talk about Gatsby's car. You can talk about a setting. And that leads us perfectly on into the setting one. Right, setting is one of the really easiest ones. It's so easy that I'm kind of worried that it's too easy and I won't get enough marks if I do write about setting, just because a lot of it is so simple. But setting is really great. As I've already talked about, the Valley of the Ashes, New York, Gatsby's mansion, how it's a factual imitation of some Hotel de Ville in Normandy, how it has a thin, raw beard of ivy or something like that. That shows that he's vulnerable. That shows that he's basically just a copycat. The stuff about Gatsby's manor is very basic, but it is good if like you really just want to like knock it out really quickly. You can even talk about the eyes of T.J. Eckelberg in a setting essay, because it's part of the Valley of the Ashes and that contributes to how the setting helps you understand the thingy as a whole. Easter egg, as I've mentioned. You can even talk about Myrtle's apartment, if you can be bothered to remember quotes for that. How it's like row of frosted cakes, and that shows how it's not as good as the wedding cakes. Daisy and Tom's house, because it's wedding cake, that's fancy, and it shows that they're married and they're not. See what I mean, where Fitzgerald, he just thinks of everything. I mean, we're reading too much into it, but he seems to have thought of everything. He's very good at this. I'm sure he was writing The Great Gatsby and was like, you know what, this is absolutely fucking banging. I haven't read any of his other things. I mean, actually I have. The Beautiful and the Damned, and it wasn't good. Finally, key scene. The next day was broiling, certainly the last day of summer. Most certainly the warmer. Pathetic fallacy shows that this is the ending of the book, because it's talking about the end of summer and the season's ending. It's getting really hot. This shows that the tensions are rising because the heat is reaching a climactic point. So is the novel. This is the climax of the novel. And this is where you talk about Tom's comments, where it's like, so I hear you're an Oxford man. You say, and basically when you're talking about all these quotes, you say how this basically furthers the tension. All these things before the point where you talk about Daisy, like the conversation between Daisy, sort of off to the side, and Tom and Gatsby. That's like the turning point within the turning point. But all these bits, basically, you say at the end of your paragraph, this builds up the tension. This shows how Gatsby's criminality is about to be revealed to Daisy, and that's what makes her be like, never mind, I don't want to run away with you. That shatters Gatsby's delusions about, you know, the past. It shows that the past has changed. Daisy now does love somebody else. It's not the same as it was 5 years ago. Tom has swooped in and he's changed things because Daisy has the security to fall back on. That isn't Gatsby. Gatsby, maybe. I mean, he's new money. They had weird stuff about old money and new money. Like, you're both rich, but one of you had slaves. So, which one is better? The one with slaves. Obviously, I love the 1920s. Gatsby, this leads to his death. And this is the part of the key scene where you talk about how the key scene affects the rest of the novel, because the key scene questions might sometimes mention that, but that's just a key, like, ending bit of your essay. You need to add the bit in the end where, like, this is how the key point affects the rest of the novel. This is how we know this is the key turning point, because things start to change. And it basically, you just say how, like, it's a complete downhill. You talk about next quote, how it's like we drove onwards into death or something like that. That also just foreshadows the thing that happens in the Valley of the Ashes, Myrtle's death, and then obviously Gatsby's death and his stuff. You talk about how the key scene made all that happen, and that's why it's a key scene, and that's why it's a good key scene. Usually in essays you should be commenting on, like, if you think it's effective or good, because that shows you kind of, like, I don't know, you have an opinion, and it's not just like pure analysis. It's evaluating comments. I know things. Maybe, like me, you're also in the middle of exams. English is my first one, so basically I'm just sort of exhausting all my revision efforts on doing this. And critical essay is the one I want to make sure I do good on it, because poetry is really a hit or miss. I mean, like, oh man, I don't know how you guys are feeling about poetry, but I'm not feeling good about poetry. Like, I'm feeling so not good about poetry, I'm not even going to give you advice. No, sir. My English teacher is always very good with me, but my average essay, I think, gets to about, like, 15 out of 20. I think maybe she said that, 15 out of 20. Maybe that's me hyping up a bit, but I mean, you're not going to get 20 out of 20 in an essay. If you're an overachiever watching this, maybe you're watching this and you're like, I just want to get, you know, I want to pass English. So I want to pass higher English because I need to go to university, and that's all you want, which is fine, man, I'm with you. But I'm also an overachiever, so if you're an overachiever watching this, you just aren't gonna get a 20 out of 20 essay, which is fine because I don't usually give you one anyway. I mean, it's just band A1, A2, stuff like that. You can obviously really go all out and do the studying for higher English, but well, don't be a nerd. I haven't done that. I don't want to dedicate my life to this stupid book. Don't even like it that much. There are better books out there. I haven't read them, but maybe I'll write them. I'm a writer. I like writing, and I think I could write a better book than The Great Gatsby. In fact, I think I have written a book. It's not chock full of symbolism and analysis as The Great Gatsby is, but I mean, hey, it's more fun. I hope you pass. Maybe it'll help talking throughout if you feel like talking is a good way to get all your stuff out, and it'll give you like a full rundown of everything you need to know. I will see you in the next one, but I won't because I'm not going to be making another revision essay video. Why would I do that? I'm not going to do that, but yeah. This will never be relevant in any essay unless you try so hard, but Nick and Gatsby are fruity as hell, and I said that here first.